Starboards, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, a UK-based Star Wars podcast with in-depth discussions and analysis sprinkled with some silliness. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
And I am Jason Hondo Ling.
And I'm Star Wars Iain.
And we are back with a brand new episode of Star Wars. We are diving into all of the latest Star Wars news. We missed last week, so we've got quite a lot to talk about. It's almost as if we need a bigger boat. But it is us three in the cockpit today. It's a three-man cockpit talking all things Star Wars. Iain, you haven't been on in a few weeks. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yourself? I'm good. It's good to be back and good to be back talking Star Wars. How are you?
Yes, very excited to talk Star Wars. There's a lot to go over, so it's going to be a big episode. Jason, are you ready for it?
Oh, I think so.
Awesome stuff. Let's dive straight into the first topic, and I suppose the first three news stories all tie into one big news story. So we're going to break it down to three parts. So the first part is just the announcement that Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company announced a leadership transition at Lucasfilm. So it's been heavily rumoured for a while. We knew that Kathleen Kennedy was sort of looking to announce her stepping down from being the studio president to focus more on producing movies. But yes, Lucasfilm has announced after 14 years of leading the studio, President Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down, with Dave Filoni leading the studio as president and chief creative officer, alongside Lin-Win Brennan as co-president. So yes, we'll break this down. So Lucasfilm announced today that after 14 years of leading the studio, Kathy was stepping down from her role. Kathy will return to full-time producing, including the studio's upcoming feature films, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and Star Wars Starfighter. Dave Filoni, who worked closely with creator George Lucas to build the Lucasfilm animation department on Star Wars The Clone Wars and helped launch Star Wars live-action series alongside Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian, will take on creative leadership of the company as president and chief creative officer, and Lin-Win Brennan will serve as co-president. Their close collaboration and more than 30 years of combined senior executive experience will carry Lucasfilm into its next chapter of storytelling, with a strong foundation on creative vision and operational leadership guiding the studio forward. We'll go to you first, Jace. What's your thoughts on it's happened? Kathy stepping down, and we are replaced now with two people. One of them is Dave Filoni, who was your pick originally.
Yeah, I have to admit, this news, I don't think came to a surprise to anyone. Obviously, the announcement that it was going to be two presidents was a little bit out of the blue, but at the same time, it seems to be quite commonplace, because I think they've done the same similarly with the DC setup and everything. And it sort of makes sense, it gives Dave the opportunity to concentrate on the creative side and to make sure that the films are doing well, while someone else is looking after the financial side. So to me, it's a really smart move. They've put two people that are in a really good position to lead the company, that have already shown really, really good leadership skills, and known the business. So I think it was a good, responsible move. And, you've got to, I don't care what anyone says, Kathleen Kennedy, hats off to her for what she has done. There's been a few missteps, but at the same time, it's kept Star Wars very much going, and back in, new stuff coming out, which we went years without. And, it's a loss as well. But at the same time, I think it's really, really cool future. I'm also looking forward to seeing what Kathleen does with the producing work that she's looking at going into. And, I think it's a really good time for the industry.
Certainly. So let's just take you, everyone's familiar with Dave Filoni, but Filoni joined Lucasfilm in 2005 and played a pivotal role in the shaping of the creative direction of the Star Wars universe. Working closely with George Lucas, Filoni was instrumental in establishing the company's animation studio and has since expanded the franchise into new and compelling territory. His storytelling contributions span acclaimed series such as The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Mandalorian, earning multiple Emmy Awards and nominations. Filoni currently serves as showrunner for Ahsoka, now in production for its second season, and is teaming with Jon Favreau on a feature film, The Mandalorian Grogu, which comes into cinemas this summer, May 22nd. So we know all about Dave. That's a little summary. But Brennan has been with Lucasfilm since 1999, so we're going back to the prequel era, beginning her tenure at Industrial Light and Magic, where she rose through the ranks to become its leader in 2009. She was appointed General Manager of Lucasfilm in 2015 and President and General Manager of Lucasfilm Business in 2024. During her tenure, she has guided the company through transformative technological shifts with a clear strategic vision and a commitment to innovation, and her industry leadership has been recognised with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Visual Effects Society and the honour of Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. So, yeah, there we have it. Ian, obviously, what's your thoughts on Kathy stepping down, and what's your thoughts on it being a two-pronged attack in her replacements?
Well, at first, I obviously saw the rumours on social media, but then we've had so many false dawns with this. I didn't know if it was true. Then obviously the original Lucasfilm statement dropped. I think it's probably about time. Like I said, I've liked what Kathleen Kennedy's done. There's also, like Jason said, there has been some missteps. And I think it is probably now a new time to press on with new leadership to see what can be done in the future with Lucasfilm. Like I said, it makes sense with the two. It makes sense with the two executives as well. Like I said, you want Brennan to oversee the logistical side of the business, and then obviously Dave Filoni for the creative side.
Indeed, and just to clarify, so the Walt Disney execs have been talking about Kathleen Kennedy. He said Kathleen Kennedy has been a tremendous force in the industry for 50 years, and it's been our privilege to have her here at Disney, leading Lucasfilm for nearly 14 of them. She has steered Star Wars to incredible box office heights and brought a new generation of fans into the fold. We appreciate having her on board to produce our next couple of films, and the studio remains in extraordinarily capable hands with Dave Filoni, who is a brilliant storyteller, and Lin-Wen Brennan, an avid innovator and a business leader. They are deeply passionate and experienced executives who will continue to drive the studio and Star Wars forward in exciting new directions. So yes, there we have it. Kathleen Kennedy stepping down. And I think Ian, you mentioned something, this has been rumoured for a while, and we knew her contract was sort of up last year, I think, but it was all about, I think, them just lining the pieces up for their replacements, and I think they've probably known who they were going for. But again, I'm glad it's been kept secret until they've announced it, which is good. It means nothing can be mistold. Maybe Lucasfilm can learn that about their next film announcements. Only announced films we're actually going to get. But yes, this has been announced, and this is what's happening. Moving on from this, obviously Kathleen Kennedy has done a exit interview, which was led to a lot of clickbait, should we say, flying around. But yes, I think she sat down with Deadline.com. I think this was in December. Obviously, it's been published now. This was a few hours after wrapping Star Wars Starfighter. And she talked about leaving Lucasfilm, her legacy, what's next for her in the future of Star Wars. She also revealed that David Glover and Taika Waititi recently turned in scripts, and that the James Mangold film is on hold. We'll dive more into those things later. But I don't know, has anybody read the exit interview?
Yeah, I had a quick look at it yesterday, and read. Well, I read the whole interview. It's quite it's an interesting, because it obviously also looks at the work she's done. I think also it's quite interesting to hear that Bob Iger, when talking about Kathleen leaving, has said that she was the one that handpicked Dave and Lin-Wen. So it's quite nice, the passing of the torch, which, I think is a good thing. Her interview is obviously, it gives loads of little hints at what could be going on in the background. without giving too many revelations, there's a lot of films that are possibly on the boil. Some, by the sounds of it, have been put aside. We had obviously the Taika Waititi one was quite interesting hearing about that because we haven't heard a lot about that for quite a while. So to hear that a script has gone in was something we weren't aware of. So yeah, there was a lot of interesting little bits that have come out of this. It's also interesting because it goes into Kathleen's hopes for the future and talks about her going to work with her husband Frank Marshall again on the producing side of things. So although she's retiring from Lucasfilm, she's definitely not hanging up her producing hat. And it sounds like we've talked about before. Kathleen's, whatever you say about what's happened while she's been at Lucasfilm, the history that she's got in the industry and the films that she's produced, it's quite exciting to hear that she's going to be going back to producing more films and doing more of the experimenting. There's also quite an interesting bit about Indiana Jones, which I know a lot of the clickbait, there's been lots. If you read the actual interview, she doesn't say that it's a possibility it could be done again. All she says is, we're all still here. We would all still do it, but it's got to be the right story, the right take, and for Harrison to be able to do it and for Harrison to be happy with it. But obviously she also talks about obviously how they sort of learnt from Solo. Not so much that it was hard recasting the character with a younger actor, but they shouldn't have done the films so close together, with Harrison still playing Solo and then having someone playing the younger version. So that was quite an interesting part of the interview where, she's saying we didn't necessarily, it wasn't a mistake that we did it, our timing was what was wrong. Which I can quite see what she means there. And, I've always said, and I've said on here a lot of times, Solo is one of my favourite Star Wars films, and I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was just not received in the way that it could have been. But yeah, it is if you get the chance to read it, read through the whole interview because, Kathleen is a force in the industry no matter what you feel about her. She's made some amazing films, and to read her take on everything is actually quite cool.
She was quite careful how she worded things, but did paint a picture, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So, obviously, what she said was, I've got to tread a bit carefully here. Jim Mangold and Bu Willimon wrote an incredible script, but it is definitely breaking the mold and it's on hold. Taika has turned in a script and I think it's hilarious and great. It's not just my decision, especially when I've got a foot out the door. Donald Glover has turned in a script, that's obviously for Lando. And as you have read, Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver turned in a script written by Scott Burns. That was obviously for The Hunt for Ben Solo. It was just great. Anything's a possibility if somebody's willing to take a risk. So we all know that. We know for a fact that the Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver script for The Hunt for Ben Solo, that was a yes in the Lucasfilm offices. It then went up to Disney, where Bob Iger and his team turned it down without even noticing, rewriting it or anything. Obviously, Kathy is a force to be reckoned with within the entertainment and film industry, as we know. And although they're saying that she's handpicked these two new presidents, which she's put them forward, but they're only there because the Disney company want them there, right? And they've got less credibility and less sway than her. So my worry is that if Kathleen can't get things made, these two definitely aren't going to be able to get things made. And that means, if they're not willing to take risks, are we just going to get cookie cutter Skywalker movies? What's your thoughts on that, Ian?
Oh, I definitely think that quote at the end was a bit of I wouldn't say a veiled shot, but definitely not a warning. I'm just trying to say what she meant by it was someone has to be willing to take a risk to make a good story. So I do think that is a veiled, maybe shot of Bob Iger on the way out. Maybe she did want to take the franchise in a newer, fresher direction, and maybe that was her way of saying, well, you need to probably take a risk to get Star Wars more popular than it currently is. So I potentially think that she needs that. That was a little bit of a veiled shot. Like I said, like I really think Kathleen Kennedy's a legend in this industry. Of course she is, and I think she's done a lot of good work for Lucasfilm. So yeah, I just think that she has her right to say what she thinks on the way out. To be fair, and I did see another quote from her as well, where she was talking about disappointing a small portion of fans. Let's be honest, if you don't make a Star Wars film for every Star Wars fan, which what they think should be a Star Wars film, then you're never going to make everyone happy, which is what she alluded to in the interview. So I just think, like I said, I think the time's right for her to move on. But I do agree with what you said, Pete, where if someone with that track record couldn't get a film made by Adam Driver, who's one of the biggest actors in the world, Steven Soderbergh, who's one of the biggest writers, directors in the world, and then I do worry about what are they just, like you said, they're just going to rehash Skywalker stories, which do have their place, but we do need to move on into a different direction. Otherwise, it'll just become nostalgia bait, which some people say it is now. So yeah, we do have to move into a different direction, a fresher direction, and do something different. I always say if you do something different, people don't like it, but I do think you have to try and do something different with the franchise.
100% yes. I think, she goes on to talk about Rian Johnson and the Last Jedi, which obviously Last Jedi did gross $1.3 billion globally. She said, when they announced that trilogy, didn't they? Remember about it? He will direct a Star Wars trilogy. Kathleen went on to say, once he made the Netflix deal and went off to start doing the Knives Out films, that has occupied a huge amount of his time. That's the other thing that happens here. After Sean and I started talking about Star Wars, Stranger Things kicks in and he was completely consumed for a while by that. That's what happened with Ryan. And then I do believe he got spooked by the online negativity. I think Ryan made one of the best Star Wars movies. He's a brilliant filmmaker and he got spooked. This is the rough part when people come into this space. Every filmmaker that can say to me, what's going to happen? They're a little scared. So just off the back, that was just her opinion on what she thought. But Rian Johnson has come out and just said, just sort of a cheeky social media saying, lol, zero spooked, sorry. But I think Ryan did get a fantastic Netflix deal with Knives Out, especially if the first one did so well. They came in and he's making those Knives Out movies now over at Netflix where probably gets zero input from Netflix. They're just giving these budget and he's able to go make his stories and they're successful and he's doing well there. And, coming back to Star Wars would mean probably putting some of that on hold and then you come back to Star Wars and then will he have the freedom he had making The Last Jedi? We don't know. Like I said, I think The Last Jedi, to me, was one of my favourites of the new trilogy. I think it was different. It dared to go places where other Star Wars films haven't. I think that's what Star Wars needs to be doing. It needs to be innovative and sort of pushing the boundaries. And it went places where you didn't expect, which I think you'd want to expect the unexpected when you're watching stories, I suppose. And, I think if he was to, because of some of the backlash, would he be given the same freedoms when he came back? I don't know. What is interesting is that, I remember when The Last Jedi came out, and sort of they were saying, look, Ryan came in, he wrote and directed the movie himself. There was sort of zero problems with the whole production or the writing process. And that was from a Lucasfilm and a Disney point of view as well. And I think that shows just how much of a good creative he is. We could review the whole interview, but it's pretty big. But what I would say is go and read it. But Jason, any closing thoughts on this exit interview?
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on what you said there with the Rian Johnson thing. When I read it, I thought I don't think it's fair to say that he was spooked. I think he certainly he'd rethink how he would understand more how the fans react. But what is quite interesting is I've got a feeling that Netflix deal has come to an end with the last film. I think he's now reached the end of that contract. So I think there was a hope that he might move on to something else, but I don't know. but there's there's a lot of little tasty bits in there that sort of give a little bit of insight. Obviously, there is a hope at some point soon. Obviously, there will be the transition again of Bob Iger will be leaving Disney again for the second time. So obviously, there's going to be a change of the way that Disney will be working. So whether that was also, does Kathleen know that there's someone new coming in and saying, look, take a risk. There's some really good projects here ready to go. That's another way of looking at what could be going on there. But it's, this interview, it was carefully timed to come out, obviously, with the announcement. So obviously a lot of things would have been cleared before it came out. But I'm glad that in some ways there's not been the secrecy and everything. We've known it was coming, but I think they have actually done this announcement right, and it's right that Kathleen's been given the opportunity to put out an interview where she sets her side of what's going on and how she sees Lucasfilm as she leaves it. And I'm quite excited that there's so many projects that are possibly there ready to go. They just need the right people to greenlight them.
Quite possibly. Ian, any closing thoughts on Kathleen's exit interview?
No, like I said, it's just a new dawn for Lucasfilm. We'll see what Dave and the other person brings to the role, and we can just see what potentially, like we're going to go to in a minute, what this means to the future Star Wars films that have been announced, because I have a feeling that we might not see a lot of them.
Indeed, and that's where we're going to go next. So between that exit interview and then also some reports that the Hollywood Reporter ran, we sort of have a rundown of Star Wars films and projects that are sort of in some form of development. So yeah, we'll start with Dave Filoni's Mandoverse film. So if you remember at Star Wars Celebration in London, which was a couple of years ago now, there was 3 movies announced. One of them was Dave Filoni's Mandoverse, almost like the Avengers, where he's going to tie in everything that's happening in the Mandoverse. So the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Everybody said it could be like Heir to the Empire coming to an end in the movie. That is on hold. And that is according to the Hollywood Reporter. Donald Glover's Lando film. Obviously, we know it's in development. As I've just said, Kathleen Kennedy said that Donald Glover's turned in a script. So, there's a script there from Donald Glover, which is pretty cool. Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy on hold. Obviously, we know he's over at Netflix doing great things. Jason says his deal at Netflix might be up, but I would imagine Netflix are probably looking to give him a new deal, I would imagine, because they did do quite well. And especially with Warner Brothers maybe coming under their fold soon, you probably want talented filmmakers under the same umbrella, but time will tell. There's a Simon Kinberg Star Wars trilogy, which is in development. Kathleen said he wrote something that we read in August and it was very good, but not there. We've pretty much upended the story and then spent a great deal of time on the treatment, which he finished literally about 4 weeks ago. And it's a very detailed treatment, like 70 pages. And so he is expected to give us something in March. I know that Dave and Lenwin are very much on board with what Simon's doing. And that would be a new trilogy. So that would be a new Star Wars trilogy. Possibly episodes 10, 11, and 12, I suppose. Sean Levy's Star Wars Starfighter. As we know, it is coming out after, so it's going to be the second movie out after The Mandalorian and Grogu. What she said with Sean's movie, this could go on, but it's not our intention right now. We really made this movie as a standalone story, but you cannot ignore the fact that this young actor is so good. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't go on and we don't try and see if there might be future stories. But it was kind of a nice not going into this and not having to think that way. We could just make a movie and tell a story. James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi film. So this was announced at the same Star Wars Celebration as the Dave Filoni one, which is on hold. And then this one's also on hold. So yes, she says that James Mangold, along with Bu Woody-Mon, who is of course one of the big creators of Netflix, is, and I've completely forgotten the name of it, but their presidential series that did really well there, wrote an incredible script. So it's just called the script Incredible, but it's definitely breaking the mold and it's on hold. So it sounds like that's not where it's too creative and it's too different to be greenlit by Disney, perhaps. And then the third film, so 3 films were announced at that Star Wars celebration in London. We've since already had a Star Wars celebration since then in Japan, by the way. Was Charmin Obaid-Chinoy's new Jedi Order film with Rey on hold. Kathleen didn't even mention this at all in any of her interviews, which says to me that this thing's in development hell. We know it's on its like 3rd or 4th screenwriter, but we know the comments from Disney Radio that we're waiting on a new script, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver as the Hunter Ben Solo, obviously rejected by Disney. Kathleen Kennedy said Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver turned the script written by Scott Burns. It was just great. Anything's a possibility if and somebody's willing to take a risk. So again, we know Disney don't want to do that one. Taika Waititi's Star Wars film, obviously status in development. She said Taika's turning the script and she thinks it's hilarious and great. It's not just my decision, especially I got one foot out the door, so that'll be the new team of Dave Filoni and his co-president as well, and also then going to Disney to get that greenlit. And then a 6th Indiana Jones film, status to be determined. What she said was, "You never know, but we are all still here, Stephen and Frank." That's obviously Steven Spielberg and Frank Marshall. Harrison Ford and George, so we get to see whether there's going to be any more or not. So quite a lot to go through there. We'll go to you first, Ian. What's your thoughts on the amount of projects that we've had announced at a Star Wars celebration to loads of press and fanfare that are all on hold?
It doesn't surprise me. Like I said, we had the Investor Day call when it was like Rangers of the New Republic and Lando and all that type of stuff. It doesn't surprise me. That's the biggest frustration as a Star Wars fan. You can't even really get excited when they announce stuff because there is a large part of your brain that says there's no point getting excited because these won't make it to the actual screen. So it doesn't really surprise me. Like you said, I'd be very surprised if we get the Rey movie. It sounds like it's just in a constant spiral. They can't really figure out what they want to do. The James Mangold one sounds cool, but like you say, are they going to do it? Probably not. And there's so many. The one, obviously, we'll get Starfighter. We know that because that's done, and I'm looking forward to that. We know Mandalorian Grogu's out this year, which I'm looking forward to. But other than that, any film they've announced, I think the one we have the most potential to probably see is Simon Kinberg's trilogy, because it's a trilogy and Disney will like that because obviously it's 3 films that you can market. But yeah, no, like I said, I'm not too convinced that any of the films really that have been announced that we'll get, apart from Mando and Grogu and Starfighter, which are already done.
Indeed, I think if that trilogy from Simon Kinberg, that's the next Star Wars trilogy, I imagine it probably has to have Rey in it. So why would you have the Simon Kinberg Star Wars trilogy with the next Star Wars story and then have a stand on its own Rey film? Like it doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we will see. And I think, again, this points to like politics in the studio. But if Dave Filoni can't get his Mandoverse film off the ground, and he's the new co-president, then like, what do you need to do to be able to get people to greenlight things? And that's a worry to me. They can't see the instant dollar signs and the nostalgia. Does that mean we're not getting it? Jace, your thoughts on everything we've just talked about?
Yeah, I don't think that it's not that we're not getting Dave's film. I think they've reapproached the way they were going to approach that story, and I think that's what we saw with Ahsoka and what we will see with Ahsoka too. But I think they took a different way of approaching it, and I think Dave stayed with the Disney Plus, that side of thing, because the one that wasn't announced that we are getting was the Mandalorian and Grogu, which obviously the original idea was, as we've said, Dave's was going to be the Mandoverse. I think the Mandalorian and Grogu is part of what they were going to do with Dave's, and I think Ahsoka is the other part. So I think what everyone's not realising is they sort of split the idea, because obviously with the Mandoverse, they had very much 2 creatives. You had Jon Favreau, who was the film director, Dave, who was learning the craft, and I think he stuck with the television side of things whilst it's gone. So I think personally that one, I don't think it's we're not getting it. I think we're getting it in a different format, and maybe they should have said, okay, this is what we've done. That's how it feels to me, because everything that we expected to get with the Mandoverse, we are getting, but in different ways. The other ones, obviously, it's interesting, the ones that have been put on hold. It sounds like there's a couple that are quite daring, that maybe they're not ready to invest in. Maybe they're seeing it as too risky. Obviously, Taika Waititi, it'd be interesting if he's doing a comedy sort of approach. Whether, again, that's one that Dave and Lumen have got to get their heads around, and whether they can sell that to Disney, because in the end, that's what their job's going to be now. They'll come up with the ideas. They've got to sell it to Disney, who will then allow them to do it. I think the Ray one, I definitely think they should have probably never announced that one. I think it was a case of get Daisy Ridley up on stage, make an announcement, get the fans excited, and that sort of backfired. Which is sad, because it does have potential. But as Ian said earlier, and that, I think maybe it's time to move away. As they said, they finished the Skywalker saga, but there's plenty more stories to tell in the Star Wars universe. And maybe that's what they need to concentrate on. So there's so much that's there, that's on hold, that could be. It does sound like the Simon Kinberg one is the most likely. And as you said, if it's a three-parter, Disney will lap it up, because they'll see that they can market it. They can, you've got the 3 years full business. There's a business plan that works with a 3-part film. So it's the way of filmmaking. It'll be interesting to see now what happens with the turnaround of these. A lot will rest on the success of The Mandalorian and Grogu, and obviously Starfighter, which is an exciting story. One that I noticed no one mentioned anywhere, which I think we sort of picked up on, being a little bit about it, but I think it's safe to say that Rogue Squadron's dead in the water. That's one that didn't get even a mention by Kathleen, which again was one they even went all out shooting the intro trailer sort of thing for the announcement that they were going to make the film.
I think that's been dead since Patty Jenkins left Warner Brothers. I think that's been dead since then. So a few years that's been dead for.
Well, I don't know. As I say, that there was an interview recently where it showed up, but then I think that became Starfighter. But I think, that it's going to be interesting to see how Dave and Linwin bring it around. Obviously, they're both very experienced now with working with Disney, which is a good point, because they will know how to get these off the ground. So there's a few projects there that I think we could be excited about, but a lot of those I think are just going to sit on the shelf.
Indeed. Ian, which project would you most want to see out of those ones just mentioned?
I think I want to see Dawn of the Jedi. Let's see what the initiation of the Jedi Order is. Obviously, 25,000 years before the actual Skywalker saga. That'd be pretty interesting to see. I would like to see that. So yeah, my choice would be for Dawn of the Jedi.
That'd be pretty cool. Jace, what's yours?
Yeah, I think I would like to see that. I think they possibly won't be brave enough to do it, because of what went wrong, or because of trying to do stuff with Acolyte. But it's one of those things. I think they do need to step away from the Skywalker saga, and I think that would be a good way to do it. Take us right back to the beginning, and show us how the Jedi appeared.
I have a feeling that Simon Kinberg's trilogy is going to have Skywalkers all over it, though. What's your thoughts on my thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. That to me is a little bit. I do wonder if the Simon Kinberg trilogy will bring in Rey, Finn, Poe, and just basically be an extension of what we've already seen, which in some ways it'll do well. It might not be popular, but it will still get people to go to the cinema. And in the long run, that's what Disney will be looking for. But it's how long can they do that? By the time they get to the third film, they may well find that they've destroyed any trust that fandom had in them in the past. But yeah, I have a feeling that's what that one is aimed at. But obviously, if Dave feels, I've said a lot of times, I do trust a lot of what he goes with because of he's obviously the fact he's got a lot of knowledge about Star Wars. I think in the interview, Kathleen actually says about how Dave and Pablo Hidalgo are the walking encyclopedias of Star Wars. And even she herself would go to them for advice on Star Wars. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how they broach that one.
And as we finish up on this news story, Ian, over to you. How long before we get sort of a loud enough backlash against Dave Filoni?
Oh, not long. I think I've seen some already. Like I said, everyone wants something until they get it, and then yeah, I don't believe it'll be long until he makes a film that people don't like, and they'll say, oh, and then they'll say he doesn't understand Star Wars and all that type of stuff, which is ludicrous, really, because he basically was George Lucas's apprentice. We have, like you say, you have to go back and remember the prequels were not well received either. So the
Well,
guy who created Star Wars, not well received by certain aspects of the fandom. I mean, like they were well received by people, but the guy who created Star Wars got told that he ruined people's childhoods and that he didn't get it, which is always hilarious to me. So it won't take long.
indeed, people forget George's quoted saying, when they said, "Oh, do you not want to make new Star Wars?" Before he sold the company, and why would I want to do that when I just get ridiculed for it? Jay, same question to you. How long before Dave Filoni gets a sort of a loud fan backlash online?
It won't be long. In fact, I think it has already started, and I think you guys just hit the nail on the head. I recently watched an old interview with George where he talks about it, and he says, that a lot of the fans miss the point about why he was making the prequel films, and his attitude was, I really don't care because it wasn't up to them. I created it. I did it for this reason. And when we look back 25 years later, actually those films worked very well and did actually do the job that George set out to do. So there's always gonna, and the problem is he also goes on to say, he sort of talked about how the fans have took on that it's got to be what they expect it to be. Well, you've got to give the kudos to the guys that are creating it. This is their creative vision. It's not our creative vision, it's their vision. They're giving you their vision of these characters. If you don't like it, that's fine, but give them the respect that they've took the time, they've given you a story. If the story doesn't work, then fine, but it's their vision, and everyone has a different vision. I'd love to rewrite all of the films with bits from all over the place and make my dream version of Star Wars. I haven't got the skills to do it, but although I could probably do it with AI now, but it is the individual's vision. And it's just, instead of picking it to pieces, sit back and enjoy what they've given you and accept it as their gift to you.
Indeed. Our next story is about Star Wars Starfighter, which, as we know, has finished shooting. and it is about Tom Cruise. So Tom Cruise gets involved in shooting a lightsaber duel from Star Wars Starfighter. So pretty cool story. Not only did we find out that Tom Cruise had been on set and did some directing, but it was also a lightsaber. So we got sort of double news whammy when this broke. So yes, it was part of a new profile on Sean Levy published earlier by the New York Times. The director revealed how Tom Cruise visited the set of Star Wars Starfighter and ended up helping shoot a scene. What he said was, last week Steven Spielberg was here, and now Tom Cruise is wielding a camera, ruining his very nice shoes. Levy reflected, this interview took place in November last year, so that was obviously before Starfighter had wrapped. And what he said was that Cruise was initially there just to watch, but after Levy jokingly offered the chance for Cruise to get stuck in, he did. Now, when you see the movie, you'll know that part of it was shot by Tom. I mean, how cool is that? Obviously, the paper described what Levy and Cruise were filming as a lightsaber duel in the water. So we'll go to you first. Ian, what's your thoughts on the double whammy, really, that not only are we getting Tom Cruise directing a scene in Star Wars Starfighter, but we didn't know we were getting lightsabers in Starfighter, and now this new story is telling us that we are.
Be very interesting to see why we're getting lightsabers. I assume it will be a new Jedi Order, obviously with Rey at the lead of that new Jedi Order. So that'll be interesting to see, and what the Jedi Order looks like. I think it's set like 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker. I think that's what I read. So that would be very interesting to see what the Jedi looks like. I hope they do something different with the Jedi Order this time instead of just having it as the Jedi Order we've always known. Maybe take some lessons from what hasn't worked in the past and work towards that. That would be cool. And just to have Tom Cruise involved with Star Wars is just pretty cool, just on the face of it, really, like I said. And it'd be interesting to see which bit he directed when the film comes out.
It certainly will be. Jace, what's your thoughts on getting lightsabers in this film, and then, of course, the fact that Tom Cruise is here lending his hands to Star Wars?
Yeah, the fact that lightsabers are here is both surprising and not surprising. Obviously, I think we all held out the hope that, this could be a bit like Andor, different take on what we were seeing of the Star Wars universe. But it does sound like we are going to be introduced to the newer version of the Jedi, unless it's an old Jedi that's been in hiding, a bit like Luke. But yeah, and to hear that it was Tom Cruise, obviously, we've talked, I think, before about how he's heavily involved in stunt work and that, and the fact that it's a dueling sequence. I can imagine he was probably stood at the sidelines watching them and wanted to dive in and was given the opportunity to. So it's a great, it would have been a great bit of fun for Tom. And also, let's face it, it's great marketing for the film to announce that one of the biggest Hollywood stars has had his first go at directing a scene of a Star Wars film. So, I sort of almost think, is this a bit of a publicity ploy? But either way, it'll be interesting to watch the film and see how that plays out.
So it is a publicity ploy because obviously, Sean Levy's broke this in an interview and they've released it like a month later. My worry is that this is getting more buzz and we're more excited about this. Some of you are about Mandalorian and Grogu, but that's out first. Do you know what I mean? I think yeah, that could be dangerous. I think if people aren't bothered about Mandalorian and Grogu because they're worried about other things, then we're in trouble at the box office here for Mandalorian and Grogu. I wonder if when Starfighter comes out, I will laugh if there's no lightsabers at all and something's just been taken out of context here, completely lied about. I think I believe in that Tom Cruise was there in that film or something. Whether it was lightsabers or not, let's wait and see. Be interesting. My big thing, if it is lightsabers, is that we can sort of guess who the good guys might be in that battle. Obviously, Jedi, but who would be the dark side? Because there's no more Sith, and obviously Ben Solo is supposedly dead as well. So, who is it?
Unless it's a flash, unless it's a flashback to maybe the Starfighter or the pilot's past with the rebellion or resistance. there's ways that the Jedi could be fitted in without it being even the newer Jedi.
Quite possibly. Moving on from that, we have more billboards appear in Times Square trying to save the hunt for Ben Solo. So, yeah, obviously, we've spoken about this a few times, Jason. Ian, are you aware of the campaign to save the hunt for Ben Solo?
I am. I've seen the billboards in Times Square, which is an interesting way of doing it. Like I said, it does get, obviously, you want to put a message across, put it in Times Square. I've been to Times Square. The billboards are quite iconic there, so it does make sense to do it there. But no, I am aware of the campaign for it. I'm all for it. I think it's a good idea for a film. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's quite a positive thing. I think we obviously, Adam Driver was obviously very careful about who he spoke to in releasing that knowledge of the fact that he was on board and him and Steven Soderbergh developed this movie, and that the script went to Lucasfilm, got greenlit from them, but then went up to Disney. They said no. That's allowed Kathy to then talk about it in the exit interview because it was already out there. I don't know if she would have done if it wasn't already common knowledge. So, and then obviously the fans have come together to sort of, positively try and push for this movie to be made. So what they've said is May 2026, renew hope in the galaxy and bring him home. Hashtag the hunt for Ben Solo. And it is savebensolo.com. Will I have any say? Who knows? But, if fans are ready to donate and put their money towards this type of campaign, a positive campaign to try and get something cool made, then why not? Jace, what's your thoughts on the latest round of billboards?
It's great to see the fans showing some positivity towards a project. It's the fact that obviously Disney don't seem to have the same positivity. This could run on forever, or almost as bad as the Snyderverse. But it's just a fun little thing to keep Star Wars in the thoughts, and the hope that one day Disney could listen to the fans and actually give them something that they want rather than what they think they want.
Indeed. Our next story, moving on, we're going to Disney parks. So, Darth Vader and other original trilogy updates are coming to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. So, basically, again, moving away from the sequel era, it looks like they want to make Batuu, Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland, more of a original trilogy setting, is what they've said. So, basically, Disneyland Resort has announced exciting updates coming to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland beginning April 29th, 2026. Black Spire Outpost is expanding its timeline, introducing elements from the events of the original film trilogy. As a result, visitors to Batuu, the planet inside Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, may cross paths with a few familiar faces, from Darth Vader and the Imperial Stormtroopers strutting through the streets to Han Solo and Chewbacca reuniting with the Millennium Falcon, all while John Williams' iconic musical themes swirl through the air. So I don't know if you guys know this, but obviously the original Galaxy's Edge timeline placed Batuu during the era of the Resistance and the First Order, obviously between Star Wars Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. One thing was, obviously, as you enter the land, you hear a John Williams original theme produced for the theme park, but then once you're inside the land, you're like inside Star Wars, so you don't hear Star Wars music because you're inside Star Wars. You do hear Star Wars sounds, though. It's often like comms chat over the radio, like animals and like certain like really cool immersive things like that. But looks like they're going to move away from that and just put the Star Wars music in there to make you think it's Star Wars. So I'll go to you first. Ian, what's your thoughts on looking to make this sort of less Star Wars immersive to be more Star Wars nostalgia hits?
It makes sense. If you're going to go to a theme park, you want to see the hits, like I said. So it makes sense to me for them to move towards having the John Williams type of music around the park and feeding off that nostalgia. I'm all for it when it comes to theme parks and merchandise and all that. That's what sells. So yeah, it makes perfect sense for me for them to move towards that instead of having nothing there really.
Indeed. So what they've said is, ever since Black Spire Outpost welcomed its first visitors in 2019, the land has been growing and changing, adding new characters, attractions, and special events. The new timeline shift is the next chapter in the ever-expanding story of Batuu, We've always seen Star Wars Galaxy's Edge as a platform for storytelling, a land that will continue to live and grow and evolve. That is explained by Azar Kalamashi, is the Vice President Executive for Creative and Interactive Experiences at Walt Disney Imagineering. So the new timeline means new characters. Han and Leia will be there as well as updates to some shops and even land itself. So one thing is that Oga's Cantina, which is there, that's going to be transformed back to a younger cantina, as if Oga's just moved into the cantina. So it'll be shut for some sort of reshoot. But yeah, basically we're going to get Darth Vader will be landing on Batuu, joined by Imperial Stormtroopers. And it's going to be Vader's search for Luke Skywalker that brings him to Black Spire Outpost. And basically the visitors may cross paths with the powerful slow near the TIE Echelon. What they've said is one of the lesser known facts about the TIE Echelon is that it's actually an Imperial era ship, apparently. It carries the same colour markings of all the TIEs from that era. Since Galaxy's Edge debut, the craft has belonged to Kylo Ren, making it sort of like a vintage car. So canonically, it aligns with a new updated timeline we're celebrating now. For those who don't know, the TIE Echelon that's in the park was like based on like production drawings for Star Wars Episode 9, Duel of the Fates, which obviously did not happen. So that's why it did not make sense what was going on. Obviously, Luke Skywalker's making an appearance, joined by Han Solo and Leia Organa. And this will be the first time the Princess and the Scoundrel are making their appearance in Galaxy's Edge. They're going to put Leia in her adventure look, apparently. So that's from Matt Martin Lucasfilm Story Group. So that's the Leia we see in Star Wars Battlefront 2, the video game, and also in the Star Wars comics. Mandalorian and Grogu could be running around as well. As we know, the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is getting a brand new mission beginning in May 2026, inviting you and your team to crew up with the Mando and Grogu to track down Imperial officers and claim a bounty. So yeah, quite a lot happening there. Part of me thinks that they're just trying to like move away from the sequel trilogy completely in a land that's been built in like it's the sequel trilogy DNA is all over it, right? Like the Rise of the Resistance ride, that's not changing. That is like purely set in that era. And I think I'm all about changing theme parks, but it hasn't been open too long. 2019 hasn't hit its 10-year point yet. We were talking about changing it. Is it too much too soon? Have you got any thoughts on that, Jace?
I've got a feeling that, from my point of view, I'm looking at it and I think it's a sensible refresh. A time, probably, it might be early, it might not be. But I think, obviously they've done the immersive. You've had that experience whilst the sequels were coming out. People that wanted to do it have done it now. But those same people might want to return or have returned. They'll only return so many times to redo the same thing. So by bringing it, obviously, we've had a bit of a drought of Star Wars films. So that and even the television series obviously was already sort of heading into that era. I know we've had Mando and Grogu already appearing at Batuu. So it sort of makes sense, to broaden the experience for those that are revisiting, but still offer the same sort of experience to those that haven't experienced it, and possibly encourage them to go because they're thinking, well, I want to see Darth Vader. I think for me, from a business point of view, it makes a lot of sense. And also from a fan point of view, they said there's a lot of stuff that they originally were going to do with Galaxy's Edge with the sequel era that they haven't managed to do. So by bringing this in, it fills in the gaps that they still had there. So I think to me, it just makes sensible business sense to do it. For me, I've always wanted to go there and have this immersive experience. I think it still will be an immersive experience, but you'll have several different ways of experiencing it. So, I don't think it's is something. It gives more to the fans in a way, or gives them more of a span of what they're going to get. You still be able to build lightsabers, but now you'll probably be able to also build more legacy lightsabers and stuff like that. So I think it's just a sensible thing to do, and it'll be a lot of fun. For guys that have been there before, it means now that they've got something different to experience when they go back there, and for those that haven't been there, they can experience what was already there, but also a few newer things that are older things.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, obviously, we're putting Han Solo now in the time frame, so the Falcon's his and Chewie's. The whole point of the whole ride, though, Smuggler's Run, is that your friend Hondo's a big part of that ride. That animatronic Hondo is there, and he's a big part of that ride, but that maybe doesn't make sense now.
Yeah, and if they move it, although there's still, obviously, they could change that to maybe, I don't know how they do it. A different character is talking. Having not rode the ride, I don't know the full input that Hondo has. Obviously, I know that at this time he's the owner of the Millennium Falcon and everything. But I have a feeling a lot of this is going to be explained because they have announced a comic book tie-in to the whole experience, which will be interesting because that could fill in the story bits and explain exactly what you're saying. And, times move on. Hondo doesn't need to be in Galaxy's Edge. Give him his own film or TV series. That's all you need to do, and I'll be happy.
Yeah. I agree with that. Things need to change. I think it hasn't even hit the 10-year mark yet, and I think, like, if you build something good enough in the theme parks, it doesn't need to change, or can last decades before it gets changed. And part of this, to me, just seems to be, and we don't know how much the Galactic Star Cruiser, which has now shut down the hotel, was going to tie into the future of the land, and obviously that's now gone. But I find it a bit hit-y-missy, changing things that, and we don't know until it's executed, right? Because it might be really good. So I'm interested to see the execution of it, but they need to execute it right, because if they ruin the land, it could take a long time to get back. If you look at Disneyland Paris, when they opened that second park, it took a long time for that park to sort of take off, and then sort of only this year now, when they are actually opening the expansion, that park's going to be sort of considered a real park. Do you know what I mean? I think it can have really long-term effects. Ian, what's your thoughts on the changes?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it makes sense to go. Like I said, you do have to constantly evolve the theme park, and I do think it would benefit from moving into different directions and just saying to people might say, "Oh, there's a new ride or there's a new thing at Disney's Galaxy's Edge. We'll go see it." Like I said, like Jason said, you can only go back to the same thing so many times before people start to get a bit fatigued with it. So yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense for them to move stuff around in the timelines and all that. And after all, it is a theme park. It's meant to be fun. I don't think we need to go too heavy into the lore behind the theme park, really.
Moving on from that, we had some Hasbro announcements on the Black Series. We're getting a Watto from the Phantom Menace. We are also getting a Torn Wee from Attack of the Clones. I think that's the first time we're getting a Kaminoan in the Black Series line, which is pretty cool. And then I believe that we are also going to be getting, also from Attack of the Clones, a Geonosian warrior. So I think it'll be the first time we get a Geonosian in the Black Series as well. You're probably a bigger collector than Jason. What's your thoughts on those three announcements?
Really cool. I like him. Watto. I'm surprised to see we haven't had a Watto Black Series. To be fair, I was quite surprised with that. So I'm happy that he's getting in. Iconic character, not only for his role in the Phantom Menace, but the technology behind him, and obviously he's a great character. So I like that. Kaminoans are always cool as well. Like I said, I don't think we've had one of them before, which is an interesting design choice. Like I said, not the easiest figure to make, and I'm really excited with and the Geonosian warrior as well, which I think is cool. I've always liked the Geonosians from Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars and all that type of thing. So I think they're really cool. It's something different, like you say. It's not just a repainted clone pack or a repainted stormtrooper pack. It's actually different characters which they've had to create new molds for. So no, I really like the fact that they're branching out and doing different characters, and I think they'll sell as well. I think people would like a Watto or a Geonosian warrior or a Kamino. I think that would be a cool idea.
All three are very distinctive looks and all new molds, which is fantastic. Also, the Geonosian and Watto come with like flying molds, like a stand, so you can put them in like hover mode as if they're flying using their wings, which is pretty cool. Ian, I know you're probably very excited by this. Obviously, we've had quite a lot of Star Killers lately in the figure lines, which has been pretty cool. But we are getting the Lord Star Killer. Do you want to take people through what Lord Star Killer is, and also how excited you are to maybe be getting this figure?
So for people who aren't familiar, Starkiller Galen Marek is the protagonist of the Force Unleashed games 1 and 2. There was an open-ended. There was like there's two different versions of how you can end the game in the Force Unleashed. You can do the light side ending, which I won't. If no one's ever played it, which I recommend you do, they are fun. It's my favorite Star Wars game of all time. If you do the light side ending, it ends one way, and then if you do the dark side ending, you end in a way that the Lord Starkiller figure was. It's basically a Galen Marek in like Darth Vader type armor. We have seen this armor in live action. We have actually seen it in Andor. We saw the helmet, not the whole armor, but we did see the helmet in Lutheran Rail's shop. And yeah, hugely excited to get it. This will be definitely one I'm picking up 100%. I'll be pre-ordering it wherever I can get it. Because yeah, like Starkiller Galen Marek is one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time.
Looks like we get quite a few lightsaber accessories with it.
Yeah, it looks like we. Yeah, I've just skimmed it because just before we came on, I saw that it was coming out and I was really happy with it. So yeah, we are looking like we're getting, because there's obviously Galen Marek wields 2 lightsabers. We are getting quite a few red lightsabers with it. So yeah, and just like I said, I think the armor's the coolest armor you can get, really.
Jason, have you seen any of these Black Series announcements? Is there any you fancy getting?
I have, and I have to admit, Lord Starkiller was the one that stuck out for me. I think I've said before, it's the Force Unleashed and the Force Unleashed 2 are the two only Star Wars games that I've played and completely got through them. So yeah, it looks absolutely awesome, but also the other figures with Watto and that they've really put a lot of effort in these, and I think also there was some retro and vintage collection announcements that look quite cool as well. At the moment, Hasbro have got a lot of stuff that they keep bringing out that I just holding myself back. I can't justify starting to collect anything. So I'm just looking at it and thinking, yeah, they're really starting to hit the ball out of the park with some of these.
Indeed. I think, me, when I feel that they're getting lazy with some of the molds and some of the repaints, I call it out. But I think all 4 of these announcements are fantastic. The figures look great, and I can't wait to see them on the shelf. It's going to be fantastic. They're also doing some good stuff with the Vintage Collection, where we're getting a Cantina 4-pack. It includes Chalmun, the Garindan, Laburia, and Orleal Shros, and they're obviously some of the really cool Cantina paintings of people around Mos Eisley. And they are coming in, well, they've been revealed this month as well, so they'll be up for pre-order as well. Obviously, Hasbro have been shipping the HasLab Cantinas out, I think, over the past month or so, 2 months or so you can pick up these 4 and add them to that, which is pretty cool. That brings in all the talking points I had listed. Jason, is there anything Star Wars you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, there's something I'm a bit grumpy about at the moment. And I don't often get grumpy about Lego. They've made a new announcement, and there may be people that disagree with me on this, but I am so underwhelmed by this announcement that I was really disappointed that they even got Dave Filoni involved. But I don't know if you guys have seen the new Smart Play sets that they're bringing out, and I just, and I've been reading a lot of what people have said, and I've looked at all the videos of what they've done, and I just think Lego are forgetting why people like to buy and play with Lego. And I think they've made this mistake before with the Hidden Side range, where they tried to add technology to something that's supposed to create imagination, and now they've put this gimmicky brick that's supposed to make the play sets more interactive. And yeah, I'm just disappointed, and I think the pricing is a little bit out. And I think these are going to be real peg warmers. But I don't think I could even bring myself to buy them if they were really, really cheap.
So what exactly is it?
It's 3 sets that they've announced so far. One's a TIE Fighter, one's an X-Wing set, and one is the Emperor's Throne Room. And they're basically set up so you've got these bricks that you then link up. I don't know whether it's by USB or something, and the brick puts out light effects, sound effects, and with the Emperor's Throne Room, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker on these horrible looking javelin type things, so that you can pretend they're fighting by moving them around, and when they clash, they make lightsaber sounds. And it just, to me, all looks a little bit child. It's aimed at a younger market, I get that, but I just think Lego as a product doesn't need to do something like this. And yeah, I don't know if you've seen any of it or whether it's passed you by, but I'm really underwhelmed by what they've done, and just disappointed with the other stuff that they've brought out over the years.
I hadn't seen it, so it had escaped my my eyes. Ian, were you aware of this new Lego coming?
No, I was no idea. I was listening with full intent to Jason there. No, I had no clue that this Lego was coming. No, they don't sound great, like Jason says.
How expensive is it?
I'm just trying to find the prices. I was looking at them, but it was on a different site. But I think one of them was about £60, and I think the other two, I think the X-wing and the TIE Fighter, TIE Fighter, were about the £40 mark. But to give you the gimmicky sort of thing, I think it's with the X-wing. It's with the TIE Fighter. You've got like a fuel station set up where you can get a character with a fuel hose and refuel the spaceship, and it makes the noise of refueling the spaceship. And just doesn't feel right to me.
Okay, well, we will see how well those sell, or we'll see if they're on discount price if they don't shift. Ian, any Star Wars things you want to chat about that you haven't yet?
No, I'm just thinking. I haven't really seen anything, like I said, but no, nothing really. I'm happy with what we've discussed so far. Like I said, I'm a bit behind on my reading, as we've discussed before, just with a new job and all that, so it is hard to fit down at the moment. But yeah, no, nothing to discuss at the moment, mate. But no, I'm happy to move on.
Fantastic. Well, that is all the news stories covered. I suppose before we wrap things up, Ian, have you had any Star Wars purchases lately? Any good Star Wars merch come across your front door?
The only thing I did get was an Ahsoka Black Series figure, the one from Peridia, which is white robes, which I do enjoy. I got that off Amazon. It was on the cheap, to be fair. It was only about £8, so I was happy with that. I'm just trying to think now. I'm just looking round. I think that's about it, mate, at the moment. Yeah, just the Ahsoka Tano Peridia one from from the Black Series line.
Is that Ahsoka the White?
That is Ahsoka the White, yes.
Ahsoka the White, get in. Jace, any Star Wars purchases come across your door recently?
No, I've been really good for the last fortnight. I've behaved myself. I have also, though, got myself a great weekend next weekend building my armor and playing Star Wars Unlimited.
That sounds like a fantastic weekend. I hope you do enjoy it. That brings an end to Star Wars for this week, a bumper-packed episode with all of that Star Wars news. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Ian, where can people find you on socials?
You can find me on socials at Star Wars Ian.
And Jace, where can people find you on socials?
At Hondo Ling, as always.
All of the podcast socials are listed in the episode description, so check those out and give us a follow. Our Patreon is also listed there. If you want to support the show, please do that. May the Force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Cancer Club.